Thank you, Katie, and welcome to everyone to today's webinar, where our topic today is how the federal government is working with 2 Tennessee cities to address urban heat islands. My name is Neil Letson. I'm a member of the Tennessee Urban-Forestry Council and will be your host. And I also want to introduce Katie Donaldson, who is with the University of Tennessee's Department of or School of Natural Resources. They've recently changed their name, but Katie is the behind the scenes person that really makes the technical aspect of this possible. Now, for our first time viewers, today's webinar is a part of a monthly series brought to you through a partnership between the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council and the University of Tennessee's Department of Natural Resources, where our sole purpose is simply to offer you a wide range of topics that will hopefully deepen your understanding of the importance of trees in our cities, and also to inspire you to take this information to grow a healthier urban forest in the places where you live now. So before we begin with our introductions and our presentation, there are some housekeeping items I'd like to cover, and I'm going to turn that over to Katie to go over those.
Thank you, Neil. Several people are already doing this, but when you sign in, please, if you can, change your profile name to what your name is on the registration that you filled out, so your first and last name. And several people are also putting their name and their certification, their ISA certification numbers in the chat. That really helps me after the webinar to go through and cross-reference the registration with who actually participated in the webinar. That way I can submit your information to ISA for these CEU credits. So if you would, please either change your name or, as many people are doing, put it in the chat with your certification number. That would help out a lot. Thank you for doing that. And Neil, I'll turn it back over to you unless there's anything else I left out.
Well, the only thing I can think of, Katie, is questions and answers. We
yes.
do encourage you to ask questions as you hear the presentation, but please use the chat room to enter those questions. And at the end of the session, we're going to allow a few minutes facilitated by Katie for our speakers to answer those. So please jot those down and just enter them in the chat room when you have a question you'd like answered. So at this time, I'm going to introduce our 2 speakers, Morgan Zabow, who's with the National Atmospheric and it's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Morgan, I was going to try to say that without stumbling, but it's simply known as NOAA, and is, in my judgment, NOAA is probably the premier earth science agency in the federal government, par none, and they do a great job of analyzing our earth sciences from the sun to beneath the oceans, and they translate that into helpful information related to the human environment in ways that we can improve quality of life in where people live. So she's going to be speaking, and she represents the Climate Program Office. And we also have someone here from Tennessee, Jennifer First, who is partnered representing her city of Knoxville. And they've partnered with NOAA through a program that's been going on for a number of years to try to apply some of the lessons learned about the urban heat islands and things that cities can do that's tailored to their needs. So we're excited to have her on board as well. So Morgan, I think with no further ado, I'm just going to turn over you, and anything that I've left out that you want to cover to introduce you or Jennifer a little bit better, please do. But we really appreciate you giving this presentation this morning.
Thanks so much, Neil. And just one thing I want to say before I get started, I'm going to be presenting on behalf of Alisa from Nashville. She's unfortunately under the weather, so I'm going to do my best to give a good coverage of the Nashville campaign. But with that, I am going to pull up my capabilities in doing that. So here we go. And again, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today about extreme heat in the middle of February. My name is Morgan Zabow, and I am the Climate and Health Communications and Outreach Coordinator with NOAA's Climate Program Office, and will be presenting on community science, urban heat island mapping campaigns, how the federal government is working with Tennessee communities to address urban heat islands. And I will be joined later in the call by my colleague Jennifer, and again, we'll be presenting on behalf of Alisa from Nashville, and they'll be going more in depth about their experience working with our program in Nashville and Knoxville, what they learned about their community's heat risk, and how they're looking to address heat. So I first want to start off with some context setting. Extreme heat kills more Americans each year than any other weather-related event over the past 30 years. And it's often referred to as the silent killer because we don't necessarily see the impacts as clearly as a hurricane or a tornado. And in addition to the hundreds of annual deaths and thousands of ER visits as a result of heat-related illnesses, heat has additional societal impacts as well. And extreme heat can have huge economic impacts, including billions of dollars in productivity losses, losses in agriculture from livestock and crop yields, and much more. And I also wanted to take a moment to look at some climate projections to show how hot it could be for the future in Tennessee. On the screen here, you can see the historical climate as well as the climate projections for Davidson County, where Nashville is located. From 1960 to 1990, the county experienced an average of about 38 days of extreme heat, which we're defining here as 90 degrees or above. And under the RCP 8.5, the high emission scenario referred to as business as usual shows that the county could see 96 days above 90 degrees by 2050 and 134 days above 90 degrees by 2090. That's over a third of the calendar year that the population of that county could be experiencing extreme heat. And this could lead to severe societal and economic consequences, including high levels of heat-related illness and death. So not only is heat a silent killer, but extreme heat is also an overlooked issue from the mere fact that the impacts are invisible, such that it's not as immediately destructive as a hurricane or tornado. The impacts may be delayed, and the impacts are hard to quantify. Additionally, extreme heat is not one particular agency's to focus on, and extreme heat is not a climate disaster covered under FEMA's Stafford Act. And while everyone is at risk of extreme heat, some groups are much more disproportionately affected by heat-related illnesses than others. For instance, outdoor workers and athletes are at a greater risk than office workers because they have increased exposure to heat. Other groups may be disproportionately affected by the effects of high heat as a result of age or poor health, or the lack of resources that enable them to adapt or recover, such as people experiencing homelessness, incarcerated people, low-income communities, and much more. And of course, in many instances, we wait too long to plan and prepare for these events and are not ready for when heat waves do strike. So for many years, many federal agencies worked separately on components of extreme heat. But to better serve the American people on this issue and provide a coordinated federal response, NOAA and CDC launched the National Integrated Heat Health Information System, or NIHIS, in 2015 to develop and provide actionable science-based information to help protect the nation from heat. NIHIS is an integrated approach to providing expertise and decision support services on multiple timescales designed to build resilience and reduce heat-related illness and death. And NIHIS spans many agency missions and mandates to deliver solutions faster and more efficiently. And you can see a list of our partner agencies at the bottom of this slide. NIHIS consists of an interagency working group, as well as partner network that allows us to engage with our state, local, tribal, and geo-academic partners, as well as international partnerships. And as I mentioned, our interagency group is composed of the federal agencies on the bottom of the previous slide and has been active in NIHIS since we launched in 2015. And while we have many different working groups and projects, I'm going to spend the rest of my time here highlighting one of our biggest programs, the Urban Heat Island Mapping Campaign program. So in this program, we're examining the urban heat island effect, which is that cities are typically much warmer than nearby rural areas, especially during the summer, as cities' roads and buildings gain heat during the day and radiate that heat into the surrounding air, which can lead to cities being 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than areas with more green spaces. And again, cities are hotter because of this. So in this image here, notice the dark rooftops that absorb the sun's heat. In the center, you can see the unshaded street lacking vegetation. You can also see cars which, when running, pump waste heat into the environment. And at the bottom, you can see infrared images of the tree and the basketball court in the bottom center of the slide. The shady tree is reading 84 degrees Fahrenheit, while the unshaded basketball court is about 125 degrees. These are the forces that cause the urban heat island effect, the ones we can see anyway. So elevated temperatures with urban heat islands affect a community's quality of life and can adversely impact both the natural and built environments. And these adverse impacts include compromised human health and comfort with an increase of respiratory illnesses, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and heat mortality, and an increased energy consumption needed to air condition homes and buildings, which leads to an increased emissions of air pollutants and heat trapping gases. Additionally, a nationwide study found that neighborhoods subjected to historical redlining typically lack green space and suffer most from urban heat islands. This study found that 94% of formerly redlined areas, which remain mostly lower income communities of color, are exposed to higher temperatures than non-redlined affluent areas. These racist policies dictated which neighborhoods and homes would receive investment in things like greenery and home energy improvements. And these investments, or lack thereof, can cause some neighborhoods to be 20 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than others, meaning some are uncomfortably warm while others are deadly hot. So to address this issue, NIHIS and private sector company Kappa Strategies out of Portland, Oregon, launched the new community-led campaigns that map the hottest part of cities, again, to learn where action is needed to protect vulnerable populations now and in the future. Roughly 80% of Americans who live in cities can experience this extreme heat variations across neighborhoods by as much as 20 degrees Fahrenheit, as I mentioned. And through this program, we work with communities to address solutions that can be implemented based on the data results. These mapping campaigns are run by participating cities' local organizations and rely on volunteers to travel around the city collecting data with proper equipment attached to their cars or bikes. The final product of the campaign is a set of high-resolution air temperature and humidity data and a report that provides a detailed analysis of distribution of heat in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And the urban heat island effect has been studied for decades, so we know the basics of what causes it, and we know what can be done to address it, such as increasing reflectivity of surfaces so heat is now trapped, increasing our green space, and so much more. And there are nationwide land surface temperature urban heat island efforts, but land surface temperature is only one measurable component of the urban heat island effect. And land surface temperature is the radiant temperature of a surface. So if you were to put your hand on the sidewalk, the land surface temperature would be how hot the sidewalk would feel. But this doesn't represent the human experience of heat, which needs to also look at air temperature, humidity, wind, and more. So our mapping campaign looks to improve the methods for measuring, monitoring, and modeling urban heat islands. And what is important about our effort, as I mentioned, is it's a citizen science field campaign. So it's not just your regular research study that gets published in a journal and really is only used by other scientists. This mapping campaign is conducted by residents of these neighborhoods who are out there collecting data, learning about the science, and are invested in not only seeing results, but taking action based on these results. And it's important to note that there's not one set solution for every city. Every community is different, and solutions from the mapping campaign data should be focused on addressing needs in the community. And on this slide, you can see photos of the campaign volunteers on the left-hand side, attaching sensors that capture this temperature and humidity data on vehicles. And on the right-hand side is an example of the data reports that are produced from the measurements. So on this slide, you can see a zoomed in example of one of our campaign cities, Jackson, Mississippi, and the stark temperature differentials of up to 13.7 degrees Fahrenheit between neighborhoods in the city. And in this year's cohort of 15 cities, our largest temperature difference was in Columbia, South Carolina, which had a difference of 18.5 degrees Fahrenheit between neighborhoods. And with these campaigns, cities and counties are able to learn where the hottest neighborhoods are in order to provide and implement solutions in these neighborhoods. And more often than not, these neighborhoods tend to be disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by environmental factors. One example of this map you can see on the right of northern Manhattan and the Bronx, which was mapped in 2021. The wealthier, more affluent neighborhoods were revealed to be much cooler than the neighborhoods that were predominantly minority neighborhoods. Additionally, this campaign paired this data with historical redlining maps and found overlaps between the hottest neighborhoods and neighborhoods that were historically redlined. And after the mapping is complete, we were able to create an equity analysis map of the previous campaign cities, which you can view on our website, heat.gov. This new tool combines the White House Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, which identifies communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution, and the NIHIS Urban Heat Island mapping data to enable investigation of how disadvantaged communities are exposed to higher temperatures due to the urban heat island effect. And so, for example, here you can see the equity analysis from Houston, Texas, which was mapped in 2020. On the left-hand side, you can see the average temperatures across Harris County in the morning, evening, and afternoon. And in the middle, you can see where the hottest neighborhoods are by census tract. Finally, on the right-hand side, we paired the UHI data with the White House CGES tool, which allowed us to determine the disadvantaged versus non-disadvantaged tracts and seeing the temperature differential between them. In this county, in which 71% of census tracts were considered disadvantaged, there was a difference in temperatures. And this particular data will be available soon for our recently mapped campaigns of Nashville and Knoxville. And so we've been running our Urban Heat Island campaign program since 2017, with our first city being Richmond, Virginia. Since then, we've mapped more than 60 communities across the country and have mapped 2 international cities for the first time last month, Freetown, Sierra Leone, and Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. You can view all the data reports from the UHI campaigns on our website, heat.gov, as I just mentioned. And we are currently in the process of selecting the cities to map in 2023, so make sure to stay tuned to learn more about the next group. And of course, we have to mention the outcomes of these campaigns. So with 6 years of mapping, we've had many different types of outcomes and solutions from the data. For example, the Honolulu, Hawaii, and Cincinnati, Ohio have been using the data to inform tree planting strategies. And as you can see on this slide, for example, Trees Honolulu was able to plant 10,000 trees using the UHI maps to really target where tree planting was needed the most. Multiple King County, Seattle departments are working with communities to develop the county's first ever heat mitigation strategy. Additionally, campaigns have been used by science museums to develop public education events. The city of Raleigh was able to fund asphalt renovations to increase solar reflectivity to decrease their urban heat island effect, and so many other examples. And here, as I mentioned on a previous slide, just really wanted to show some of the stark differences in temperatures when you have more vegetation versus not. And this was used with a FLIR camera from our Las Cruces, New Mexico campaign. And on the top, you can see on this particular street, the temperature was recorded at 137 degrees Fahrenheit, where the bottom was taken in an area with more vegetation, and it had a temperature of 92.5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a stark difference. And just quickly, I wanted to highlight one of our major efforts this past year, launching heat.gov. So if you want more information, not only just on our urban heat island work, but on heat and health generally, and with more strategies for addressing urban heat islands. So on July 26th, the Biden administration through NIHIS launched heat.gov, a new website to provide the public and decision makers with clear, timely, and science-based information to understand and reduce the health risks of extreme heat. And again, we offer maps, data, and information from across disciplines, from inside and outside of government, that will enable informed decisions by communities on a daily basis and allow planning in the weeks and months ahead. And as my last slide, just wanted to mention in 2023, later this spring, we're going to have our next NIHIS national meeting. And this is going to take place April 25th through 27th. And we hope that if you are interested in learning more about heat and health, you are absolutely welcome to attend. We want to invite you all to save the date for this. And the goal of this meeting is to empower participants with resources and a strong network to support further actions to enhance community and institutional resilience to heat. And we'll have more information on heat.gov soon. And in closing, I just want to remind everyone that heat-related impacts are largely preventable with proper planning, education, and action. And NIHIS is working towards this to see a nation free from heat-related illness and death. And thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions at the end. And Katie, just wanted to check, I believe I am presenting on behalf of Nashville next, correct?
Correct, yes.
Perfect. I will get those slides pulled up. All right, so again, I am presenting on behalf of Alisa, who was one of the leads for the Nashville heat mapping campaign. So if you do have any more specific questions about this particular campaign, I can make sure to record your questions and send them over to her. Unfortunately, I was not able to participate in this campaign, but did help with a lot of the organization and logistics of getting it all set up. So gonna try my best to do Nashville justice. Just first want to start with an overview of the campaign team. So the Nashville campaign was primarily planned by Nashville's mayor's office, as well as geosciences and sociology at Middle Tennessee State University, as well as the Cumberland River Compact. And they did have a variety of project partners that did help them throughout the campaign process, as you can see on the right-hand side, including the Nashville Metro Public Health Department, Vanderbilt, Tennessee Climate Office, Tennessee Department of Health, Nashville Adventure Science Center, Tennessee State University, Urban Green Lab, and Fisk University. So why did they decide to do a heat map of Nashville? So climate change is projected to have increased extreme heat more than other weather threats. And extreme heat days and prolonged heat waves in Nashville and the surrounding region are becoming more frequent, intense, and long-lasting as climate change worsens. In 2012, Nashville experienced its hottest day in 141 years of record keeping, which pushed the Tennessee Valley Authority to provide a nearly record 31,099 megawatts for its 8.7 million residents. Heat waves have also had substantial health impacts. And from 2000 to 2014, according to the Tennessee Department of Health, Davidson County had 2,554 emergency room visits due to extreme heat. And additionally, within this, they were really looking to heat map Nashville in order to really understand the varied land covered with compact downtown and green neighborhoods. And we'll get back to this when we look at the actual map and see how that came into play. But additionally, they're really hoping to understand the inequitable distribution of urban heat risk and vulnerable populations. And while extreme heat affects all Nashvillians, some populations are particularly susceptible to its impacts and have a reduced ability to adapt or recover. And health impacts due to extreme heat will disproportionately affect older adults, pregnant people, young children and infants, people with physical or mental health conditions, low-income communities, communities of color, and immigrants and refugees. And Nashville is also in the midst of navigating a substantial increase in homelessness. And from 2015 to 2016, the rate of homelessness in Nashville rose 9.8%. So extreme weather events can have a more severe impact on people living outdoors. And of course, research shows that neighborhoods that experience historical redlining, as I previously mentioned, tend to be warmer than others. And the monitoring efforts within Nashville are really looking to target some of these areas in particular. I also want to note that the organizers wanted to map Nashville in order to gather current geospatial data on heat-related parameters to inform future local research, programs, and decision-making, and response activities that are connected to or can be impacted by heat, and while building greater awareness of the environmental, economic, public health, and societal impacts related to urban heat islands among the public. And collecting and aggregating this information will serve as an initial data point that can allow Nashville to compare heat islands over time, ensuring it shifts its approach to responding to these issues in a way that's dynamic and relevant. So before we get into the data results, just wanted to show the mapping routes that did take place in Nashville. So the Urban Heat Island campaign takes place over the span of one day, and volunteers go out in the morning, evening, and afternoon in the span of 1 hour during each of those times. And so the lead organizers within Nashville worked with us and Kappa Strategies in order to make sure that the routes that they were all taking were also really hitting points of interest. And some of the things on the left-hand side you can see here were looking near where cooling shelters were, where there was less vegetation, looking at parks, vulnerable neighborhoods that we've mentioned, as well as higher income neighborhoods, to really look at the juxtaposition between the heat there, and as well as different types of streets. So this is what their routes looks like. If you're familiar with Nashville, this may be a little bit more helpful for you to put into context where they were doing the mapping. So there was a lot of recruitment and media from the beginning when they found out that they were selected to do the mapping, as well as the whole process of moving through the campaign and afterwards. So on the left is just an example of some of the media. If you are interested in learning more about these campaigns, whether it was written, it was media, on the news, whatever it may be, but they just wanted to leave that there for you all. So for the campaign, just before campaign day and leading up to it, they contacted all those who signed up to receive more information through a variety of different listservs, reaching out through social media, and they had 142 community members who expressed interest because, again, the Urban Heat Island mapping campaigns we run are citizen science, so it is volunteers from all these communities who are out there collecting the data. And everyone who signed up to do the training, to go out and do the mapping, completed a training to understand, again, about urban heat islands, how the sensors work, and were sent a link to sign up for a time and route, and to drive and navigate. So people were volunteering to drive around, as we just previously saw, the predetermined routes on those particular times during that day. So now we're at the actual campaign day. So it took place on a hot, clear day on August 14th for the Urban Heat Islands. We have all the cities work with their weather forecast offices to make sure that there's low cloud coverage on that day, that it's not going to be raining, and it's typically in the 90th percentile of temperatures. And as you can see here, it was 10 routes throughout Nashville, again, an hour drive each in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And at the bottom are just some pictures of some of the great volunteers that came out on that day to help us out with this. All right, so getting into the results. This is the overall summary of what the Urban Heat Island looked like. And as you can see, generally more concrete means that it was warmer. So the report found that areas with high density of development trap and accumulate the heat during the day, as well as the residential areas adjacent to commercial areas with high impervious surface or streets and parking lots seem to retain even more heat. And it also found, as is probably well known, residential areas with a high percentage of canopy cover seem to stay cooler throughout the day. And I also want to note that while it isn't listed here, Nashville had throughout the mapping campaign, found a 12.4 temperature Fahrenheit difference between neighborhoods. And so breaking this down just a little bit more, first we're going to start with the 6 to 7 a.m. morning route. And they found that the most heat retained overnight really in, as we mentioned, the highest concrete density areas, areas with low vegetation, and areas that were more high density. And next, as we move into the afternoon route from 3 to 4 p.m., again, finding these really high concrete areas, and especially the airport, warmed the most during the day, as you can see, which is highlighted here. And now we're getting up to 95.2 degrees Fahrenheit versus some of our morning temperatures. And much of the darker red is highlighted kind of right in the middle there where those higher density areas are. And again, pointing out that vegetation in low density areas really stayed the coolest. And you can see there by the bluer areas on this map where those areas were located. And now getting into the evening route, again, finding that the high concrete and density areas were the slowest to cool in the evening. Again, right in the center where those higher density areas were taking much longer to cool down as it was getting into the evening. And one thing that we definitely know is that overnight temperatures, if the body is not able to cool down, can cause even more heat-related illnesses and death. And just here, another comparison of the afternoon and evening temperatures, once again showing that this middle area really is not cooling down as we're moving from the evening to the afternoon to the evening. And also wanting to point out that the historical housing policies are still affecting heat vulnerability, as the areas that are heavily redlined are those areas right here that are of the highest temperature, where the lower, your greens, your blues that had lower historical redlining were in the blue lower temperature areas. So this is definitely still going on today in Nashville. So what are the next steps? And again, I work with NOAA, not working directly in Nashville communities. So this is just information shared from Alisa, but after using the data and working with Kappa Strategies, one of the things that they're putting together is a story map to really be able to educate the public and have it more widely available for people to understand their heat risk. They will be hosting a public event coming up, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And of course, the public access to the data is currently available on heat.gov, but they are also working to put together information on the city government website as well, and also looking to really incorporate the findings and data into educational opportunities moving forward. And as the last thing stated on this page, really hoping to start addressing some of these inequities. And this is what the future story map is going to be looking like in the early stages. And with that, that is my overview of the Nashville campaign. Again, if you do have any questions specific to the campaign, please put it in the chat and I will make sure to let Alisa know. But thank you all so much.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my slides. Okay, I think everyone can see that. Thank you so much for the invitation to present. My name is Jennifer First. I am at the University of Tennessee, College of Social Work, and I was able to lead our campaign here in Knoxville. I just want to say how excited we were to be a part of the Urban Heat Island Mapping Campaign. We were also so excited that 2 cities, so for the first time this summer, the state of Tennessee was able to participate in this, and how excited we were that we had 2 cities participating. So I'll be sharing the Knoxville, our project. We really wanted to center this project in equity issues. And so that was the title of our project, was Knoxville Heat Equity Project. There we go. And we came at this project with 3 overarching objectives. And what I loved about Morgan's talk, just in terms of talking about how every community is different and how this process really embraced that and emphasized that. And also that really to get at these issues, we need to get at the human experience of heat. And so our project objectives, we went into this, we wanted to create a group of stakeholders coming together. So we really wanted this project to be driven by a diverse group of local experts and partners to address extreme heat. We didn't want to come at it, just from the University of Tennessee or just from government. We really wanted it to be a diverse group running it. Our second objective was then to conduct a community assessment of urban heat impacts on residents of Knoxville. This is where the heat mapping campaign was a major piece. And then third was, and what we're doing right now, is to build capacity to respond to heat risk and inequities in our city. Our project timeline, we started back in November of 2021 when we started forming our stakeholder group. So before we even knew that we'd be able to do the heat mapping project. Our second objective, then we did our vulnerability assessment this past summer, July and August. And then that assessment included both the heat mapping project, and then we also wanted to get the community voice. So we did a survey, and I'll share some of the summary of those results as well. And then what's going on right now is developing our heat response and building capacity. In terms of our heat stakeholder group, these are some of the kind of overarching groupings of individuals and organizations that were involved as stakeholders. We had different groups from the University of Tennessee, different departments. We also had different offices from the city of Knoxville. So we had the Office of Sustainability, Office of Homelessness, Diversity and Inclusion. We also had Knox County involved. We had a lot of different community organizations that were involved, youth members. We wanted to have community members. We had different residents who were a part of this stakeholder group, and then also the energy sector. And again, here's a picture from one of our stakeholder meetings that we had in terms of planning the Urban Heat Island Mapping Campaign, coming together, talking about how we're seeing heat impacting the residents of our city, what factors contribute to its uneven distribution. And again, we really wanted to come at this from a bottom-up approach and have this two-way communication between our community and neighborhood experts, and really have this and continue to have this interactive and iterative process in terms of thinking about knowledge and thinking about our producing knowledge and producing solutions. And then this led then to our Urban Heat Island Mapping Campaign. And this again was a NOAA-funded citizen science field campaign. And how we went at this in terms of recruiting our citizen scientists and our volunteers, we did a large kind of blanketing of recruiting from different listservs, social media posts, flyers, neighborhood groups, volunteer organizations, faith-based organizations, environmental justice groups. We really blanketed the community, and we had a tremendous response, over 100 volunteers who signed up, who wanted to participate in the campaign, and who completed our training on the equipment and how to use the equipment through Kappa strategies. And so here is a little bit about our campaign. So our campaign happened on August 27th. That was when our clear, sunny, hot day happened. And here's some pictures of our volunteers. We even had a professional Santa Claus who participated in the event. And so, as has been mentioned, how the data was collected, volunteers attached these sensors to their cars. And then they traversed predetermined routes at 3 different time points, morning, afternoon, and evening. And just to show our routes where the data was collected, I'll just mention that because of the size of Knoxville, our city is just around 100 square miles. So we were actually able to do our entire city, which was great. And these predetermined routes, these were, again, done in collaboration with our stakeholder group. We really wanted to get at heat issues. So what would be important to capture where heat and people kind of intersect. So we came up with different points of interest to decide these routes, and points of interest were areas like playgrounds, senior centers, bus stops, schools, all throughout the city. And so each of these were about a 10 square mile. And in collecting this data, we're able to look at our differences in terms of temperature and humidity. Okay, so to share the results, we had 9 routes. On the left is the observed results. So this is the point in data that was collected by volunteers. And then Kappa Strategies was able to model that data, put it together with satellite data, so that we could have both the point data and predicted temperature values across the entire city. And just to point out, in terms of what we found, and I'll just share one of the, this is our evening map. We found that our city, some of the hotspots, I think I imagine have a lot of Knoxville folks on this call. So this will mean something to you, but what really stood out in terms of our hotspots, our downtown area, our own UT campus was a hotspot. Kingston Pike, North Knoxville, Lonsdale, Western Heights, Edgewood, Park Ridge, Morningside. And then we really saw how the heat really followed along Interstate 40, kind of throughout and across the city. And these areas that were found to be hotter, this was due to impervious surfaces, lack of tree coverage, green spaces, and again, interstate systems. And in terms of, we found as high a temperature difference of almost up to 16 degrees difference in parts of our city. And so how that translates for people then, of course, is a 90-degree area in one part of our city could be 106 for another neighborhood in our city. We also saw that in terms of the neighborhoods that were particularly hot, we saw reflected that these neighborhoods, many of them had been formerly redlined areas in our city. And so really able to see how historic in terms of racist policies still have disparate burden of heat on people who are living in these neighborhoods in our city. The other piece that I'd like to share, again, just to kind of bring that human element of how heat is impacting our city. We did do a survey, and so I'll just briefly share those results with you. We did this survey at the same time as the heat mapping, and we promoted this again through community organizations, social media, city neighborhood, e-news publications, and we had a great turnout. We had over 400 participants in our heat survey, and we wanted to find out again how people were aware of heat, how they received alert systems, did they have access to AC and green space, and overall how heat impacted their health. And so I'll just summarize those results. The most glaring result that came through in this survey was, again, this disparity of heat. And so we found that residents of these intra-urban heat islands, these hotspots in Knoxville, were more likely to experience heat-related illnesses and injuries. We also found racial and economic disparities in terms of who is being most impacted by heat-related illnesses. And then the other piece that we found was this in terms of disparate burden on the higher cost of cooling. So in terms of additional negative impacts, including these areas reported worse air quality and having to pay a higher burden to cool themselves. And this survey that we did it had both open-ended and closed-ended responses. And so this came through both in the open-ended responses, just to share what one resident said in our community. Many people have to decide between the cost of cooling their house with AC and being able to put food on the table. The other piece of this survey, we also asked about how the community, we wanted to take this, how can we, our community best improve your quality of life around heat-related issues. And I'll just share some of the open-ended responses that we saw most frequently. Again, lowering utility bills was something that we saw the most in terms of these responses. And how energy burden was really impacting a lot of residents of our city. Also, we saw a lot of responses around needing more bus stops, needing more shade and protection. And then finally, we found a lot of responses related to public awareness of heat. One respondent said, we need more public awareness about heat risk. 20 years ago, we maybe had a few really hot days, but it keeps getting hotter and for longer stretches. Our community is not ready for this. And then finally, the third objective that I mentioned and what we're doing now is really focusing on building capacity in our city to respond. And one of the ways that we're doing this is really getting the data, the reports from the Urban Heat Island Mapping Campaign out. And so it's, again, the community collected this data. It's the community data is how we see it. And we, as soon as we could, we wanted to make that publicly available. So I encourage you to read that report. Also, that data is publicly available for you to use. And you can, this QR code will take you right to it. And then some other ways that we're building capacity and how this project is informing local policies and programs. So the results are informing the Office of Sustainability, their sustainability plan. Our city right now is we're doing our whole urban forestry master plan. And these results are helping to inform where we will be targeting areas in our community. Some other ways that it's informing community programs would be our Community Action Center. They do most of our utility programs in the city, and then our Office of Aging. And then finally, one of our groups, SEED here in Knoxville, they're doing weatherization and energy burden workshops in the community of Morningside. And they're including this data in those workshops. One up and coming research project that I'm really excited about that came directly from this urban heat island mapping campaign is Oak Ridge National Laboratory reached out and wants to use this data to do an up and coming study on soil moisture, tree water use, and urban heat islands here in Knoxville. And we're really making sure that project is also partnering with local organizations, so SEED, Beardsley Farm, and other organizations, so that we can make this also a kind of a public outreach and educational opportunity for the community as well. And then the final thing I'll say, that this project really has provided education and training opportunities for, I would say, the next generation of young scientists in terms of, who is going to inherit this burden of heat. And so really providing those training opportunities as well. And that's all. Thank you all. I'll turn it over to Katie and Neil.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Jennifer, and you too, Katie. Those were outstanding presentations. And quite frankly, I'm even more impressed with this national program that dates back, I believe you said, to 2017, and over 60 communities nationwide have participated. And y'all are gearing up for the next crop of communities this year. So I'm sure you've generated a lot of interest from people representing other states and other cities that will want to participate. I know before Katie looks at the questions, Jennifer and Morgan, can y'all unmute yourselves? I wanted to ask Jennifer a question of you. I'm real interested in the public health component of these urban heat island assessments, and I was real pleased to see that in Knoxville you included public health is on your stakeholder team, and I believe it was the UT Medical Center. I'm not sure. I wasn't writing quite fast enough, but you had some results of some of the illnesses, heat-related illnesses, respiratory diseases, and some various areas. How did the medical center, how did y'all collect the data that you could connect that with your urban heat neighborhoods?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Public health is really a central piece, I would say, to this in terms of both examining who is vulnerable and then also coming up with solutions. So to answer your question, in terms of at UT, we had someone from the public health department at UT. And then we also had someone from one of the hospitals locally who we met with and were talking with. However, how we received our data on health was from that survey. So we asked participants who took the survey questions about how heat impacted them. So we asked things, had they ever experienced heat exhaustion? Had they ever experienced heat cramps, heat stroke? Did they ever pass out from heat? So those were the sort of questions that we were asking directly to participants. I will say this, though, that, and this is something that for Tennessee and for those of us who are studying this, one of the biggest barriers has been getting access to that data. So some states make that data available in terms of hospitalizations related to heat or heat-related deaths. Tennessee does not. It's actually a very lengthy and hard process. It's been a major barrier. Those in terms of hospitalization data, I think that it was last given in 2016, I believe. But I will say that I think that data should be made available. I think the community has a right to that data. And that's something that I hope to see change. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes. Katie, do we have any questions in our chat room?
Yes, we have several. First, are there any specific sites where alternative hardscapes or paving showed a measurable difference in the urban heat islands?
I would have to think on that one since we've had so many campaigns over the past couple of years. And again, not being directly involved with the actual day of the Nashville campaign, I can't comment on that one, but we'll leave that up to Jennifer if you all measured that in your campaign.
So that is something that I know that the Office of Sustainability took this data, and that is something that I think that they were combining and looking at. So I don't have, I can ask about that in terms of, so I could reach out to the Office of Sustainability and find out about that. And maybe if whoever asked that question, feel free to follow up with me by email if that's helpful.
Another question, where can someone purchase one of the heat and or humidity sensors?
Yeah, so for the specific sensors we use in our campaign, the technology is owned by Kappa Strategies, the private sector company we partner with. So if you're looking for one of those sensors, you would need to reach out to them, and I can put their website in the chat. But many communities that want to learn more about heat have purchased floor cameras to just kind of understand, especially looking at tree canopy versus streets that definitely have a lot more asphalt and not as much vegetation. And I, in my presentation, had a picture of the juxtaposition within that and really seeing the temperature. So some people do use that instead of necessarily, getting the sensors from Kappa, but I can put that link in the chat.
Perfect. And someone just asked, how did they get their community on the list?
Yeah, so it is an application process. We opened for 2023, we opened the applications in, I believe it was mid-October, and that's typically what we do every year. And they closed in mid-December this year. So it's not a lengthy application by any means. It's a Google form and just trying to learn information about your community, and some of the things being like, what is your heat problem? Why are you concerned about it? What populations are you concerned about as well? And then also learning about what your volunteer base would look like, your partner organizations. And as I mentioned, we are in the process of selecting our 2023 cities, and so stay tuned for who those will be, but we should be announcing them in the next couple of weeks.
And then several questions as part of one giant question. How much money does the federal government provide for this program? How much goes to shovel-ready work as opposed to salaries for the people in charge? Do they maintain accurate accounting, and is this all public record?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not a regular grant program, so we don't give the money directly to the communities. Instead, money that we have allocated goes to CAPA strategies, and so through them, we provide them the money to be able to then work with the communities for these funds. And so, for things like staff, volunteer time within each community, it differs. So some communities are able to work with different local organizations to maybe have gas gift cards for volunteers, especially as you've seen, it's volunteers driving around and gas prices have been increasing. So they try to help offset that. It can be providing lunches and meals for volunteers. So it just differs per community how they work with volunteers or do staff time.
Okay, and a few more. Do you have a spec sheet on the record electrical production from TVA?
I guess that's for me. In terms of, I do not. So I guess the question is trying to get at how maybe over time looking at energy use and comparing that to heat events, if I'm understanding. I think that there is actually a few scientists at ORNL that have done some interesting work around energy use in the past related to extreme weather events. And so that is something that I've been thinking about trying to reach out to them, but I don't have a spec sheet. But I think that that's a really important, in terms of future work, that would be important.
And Morgan, I believe this question is for you. Is the project a match project where the state has to match federal support?
Yeah, great question. So in the application process, we ask if cities or counties have any matching funds that they can provide. It's not required by any means, but some states are able to. And the base campaign of the basic cost of it is for 100 square miles. So for some communities that are looking to map more than 100 square miles, they typically have to pay a little bit more.
And one person said they noticed among the 60 cities in the national study so far, none are in the Northern Plains. Are there plans to add a locale in that region?
Yeah, so I know we've had one so far in the Northern Plains. We did map Omaha, Nebraska as part of our 2022 campaign. But again, it's all based on the applications, and we definitely want to cover as much of the United States as possible. So would love to see applications from those locations and hope to see more from that particular geography in the future.
And last one, how does NOAA follow up with and support communities who have participated in this program already?
Yeah, great question. So right now we're in the process of putting together a cohort of all of the cities from 2017 to now to have quarterly meetings to really discuss a lot of the solutions that they are implementing and see and have, relationship building, networking among these cities so they can share best practices of solutions and hope that maybe they can implement if Omaha is doing one great solution that Nashville or Knoxville think could be really useful in those communities, they can learn from each other.
Okay, I'm scrolling back just to make sure I haven't missed anybody. And okay, this will probably be the final question because I don't want y'all to stick around for too long. Who is the best person to contact if they have a movement around tree planting and soil rehabilitation to reduce heat islands?
Do you mean in both in Knoxville or in Nashville or?
They did not say.
Well, I would say in Knoxville, I would say right now our community is working on our urban forestry plan. We're having large community groups I would say that it's a great time to get involved. I can connect you to that group if you're interested in if you were looking at Knoxville.
And his response is Denver, Colorado. So different city.
Okay. Katie, is that our last question?
There's one more if y'all don't mind me sneaking one more in.
Go for it.
Are there any related programs that public housing authorities can seek funding to increase tree canopy in or around these urban heat islands?
Morgan, I don't know if you want to tackle that too. In terms of public housing authority and tree canopy, I don't know that there's been an overlap in terms of funding for that. I don't know, Morgan, do you want to?
I would say the best answer to that question would potentially be through the U.S. Forest Service. So I know that they have a lot of funding and are looking at increasing tree canopy in state and local levels. Yeah, I would say that's probably the best agency to look for towards that, because I'm not sure exactly what, say, Department of HUD is doing on this particular issue.
Yeah, they typically go more with weatherization, buildings, but it's a great idea, and yeah.
Okay, I think that is it.
All right. Well, thank you. Let me just do one little follow-up here. I know there was a comment about having another way of getting to the reports, two reports in Nashville and Knoxville. And I've noticed that, Morgan, you've posted those links in the chat room. One of them is at the 11:41 timestamp, and the other is at the 11:42 timestamp. So people may have to scroll down to find those, but you provided those links.
And if it's easier, our website is heat.gov, pretty easy to remember, and just find the Urban Heat Islands tab, and all those reports from 2017 are available there as well.
Okay, great. I'm sure folks will make a note of that. Well, I want to thank you two again for the fantastic presentations, and through all the information and the work that you've done in Knoxville, Jennifer, and Morgan, nationwide that you've done, and the work that was done in Nashville. One thread kind of stands out for me, and a kind of a take-home message, and that's the benefits of collaborations and partnerships. These are complex issues in our cities, all kinds of things that people are having to deal with, and including trees. And trees are part of the issues, but also they need to be at the table when some of these discussions, and y'all set us an excellent format for us to do that. So I really commend you, Morgan, and Noah, and people like you, Jennifer, for really following through with these concepts. It sets a pattern and a way forward, I think, for the rest of us to work with other people in our communities and make them better places to live. But I just wanted to make that point. Okay. Katie, we got a couple of slides at the end we want to go through. There's a few folks hanging on here, and I want to get some information on upcoming webinars that they can look out for. But first, I want to thank everybody for attending. Y'all sat through the entire time, many of you, and we really appreciate that. It tells us that the topics we're bringing to you are meaningful, and we do try very hard to do that. So if you have any other ideas or suggestions or speakers that we can invite to do a webinar, please let us know. We are always open to new ideas and thoughts that can be of help to you. All right. Okay. Once again, I want to remind everybody these webinars are brought to you free of charge through a partnership between the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council and the University of Tennessee School of Natural Resources. We do want to make a comment that the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council is a volunteer group. We don't, we have a lot of folks that donate their time, and we have some outstanding programs that we provide to the people of Tennessee and beyond. But if you'd like to be a part of the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council, please contact us or visit our website. And all you got to do is Google Tennessee Urban Forestry Council. And if you'd like to donate to our cause to help us to expand programs like this, we would certainly welcome your contribution. Our next webinar, yeah, there we go, is kind of going in another direction here. It has to do with urban wood waste and urban utilization. And we're going to hear from Jeff Carroll, who is the CEO of a group called Urban Wood Economy. I believe they're based in Baltimore, but they have done some outstanding work in the city of Baltimore in helping them to address and better stem the flow of urban wood waste away from the landfill into a useful urban wood economy. And he is now beginning to expand his services and consultations to other cities, one of them being Memphis. And we're going to hear about the Memphis project on March 16th. It's a Thursday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, and it qualifies for a CEU, and I say CEU, and I'm really looking forward to this one as we attempt to solve some other issues related to trees in our cities, and that is urban wood waste. So I hope you can join us. Look forward to seeing you there. So with no further ado, thank you again, Morgan and Jennifer, for a wonderful presentation. Y'all went above and beyond, and we really are thankful for the work you do and sharing that